Hey everybody, Who's Your Jedi here with another review for you. This time I'm talking episode 9 of season 2 of Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. called Ye Who Enter Here. This is another very solid entry into the series. I thought it was a pretty good episode, and it just a really nice example of how strong season 2 of this show has been. So let's just kind of get right into things. First of all, it's December, and even though so far it's been really a mild winter here in the Midwest, I gotta say, watching all of that beautifully shot scenery of Puerto Rico kind of makes me want to go on a nice little Caribbean vacation. That was some really, really gorgeous cinematography there, and the director was clearly making use of every bit of the scenery around San Juan, or at least I assume that was San Juan, that they could. And it's always nice to see S.H.I.E.L.D. get to actually do location work. Actually, these days on American TV, I'm kind of happy when I can see any place that I can look at and go, that is definitely not Vancouver or the woods just outside of Vancouver. Anyway, so let's kind of get into what's going on with the characters this episode, and let's start with Mack, because he had some really big stuff happen with him this episode. Now, the first thing that was really important was that conversation he had with Bobby about that other thing, which is something that relates to Nick Fury. Now, the first thing that leapt to my mind were the Secret Avengers. But I don't think Nick Fury's got another superhero team squirreled away somewhere. And if they did something like that, they'd do it in a movie. They would not put that on television. The other thing that kind of jumped to my mind was the magical section of S.H.I.E.L.D. And, yeah, S.H.I.E.L.D. does have magic users working for it. There was even some comics I read recently where Maria Hill, in a televised interview, basically said, well, while there's always room for improvement, I'm very confident that our current magical protections that we have in place can handle anything that comes along. I mean, stop and think about that. In the Marvel Universe, you have a high-ranking S.H.I.E.L.D. agent giving a televised interview talking about the existence of magic. I mean, basically, it's an officially sanctioned thing that magic exists. I mean, granted, that's the comic book Marvel universe where, all kinds of crazy magical stuff has gone down in New York multiple times. But still, now I don't really think that they're going to try and introduce magic here on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. They're doubtlessly saving that for the Doctor Strange movie. I mean, they did go through the trouble of getting Benedict Cumberbatch to sign on the dotted line as Doctor Strange. They mentioned him in Winter Soldier. So clearly they do have plans for the magical side of the Marvel Universe. But again, that's just not something I think that they're going to get into on S.H.I.E.L.D. At least not for several seasons. Or let's just assume that we're not going to see anything like that until after the Doctor Strange movie. So what could it be? Well, life model decoys kind of come to mind given what's going on with the Koenig brothers. But again, there's like a million things it could be. So getting along with what else happens to Mack, where he sort of touches that weird thing and has that sigil pop up on his hand, and suddenly he's got superhuman strength and is attacking people. So the question, of course, is Mack also a potential Inhuman? And I have a feeling that that might be what they're trying to do. If Skye gains powers, it would be an interesting contrast because Matt, one member of S.H.I.E.L.D. gains powers, and it's really bad, drives them crazy, and another member of the team gets powers, but it works out okay for them. On the other hand, that could have just been some part of some trap that was set to sort of protect things, and just instead of turning him into stone, Mack just got changed and driven crazy. I mean, that's certainly an idea that's out there. And it is kind of questionable whether or not they'd want two people with powers on the S.H.I.E.L.D. team. I think if they did just have one person, that would probably be okay, and Skye seems the most likely candidate for that, given how much of her backstory that would be. If it turns out that they do keep Mack around and he too is also Inhuman, it's just more of a left field thing. I mean, like, wow, what a coincidence, huh? Of course, this doesn't really seem to bode well for Mack surviving too much longer as a character, which would be pretty rough. I mean, he's kind of Fitz's closest buddy right now, and if that were to happen, well, I guess it might pave the way for Fitz and Simmons kind of coming back together as a pair. But another major thing in this episode was Fitz and Simmons finally addressing the elephant in the room, and Fitz basically saying, I can't go back to how things were before between us. I'm not that person anymore. I mean, he flat out says, I can work for you, but I can't work with you. You know, the hive mind just is no longer a possibility. Now, Bobby and Gemma do have this little nice conversation where they talk about the whole situation. And you kind of get the feeling that Gemma, at least I did, that Gemma does consider Fitz to be her best friend. But everything that's happened, I don't think she's really sat down and asked herself if she genuinely could see him as anything more. I don't think she sat down and asked her, is like, okay, would I be up for a romantic relationship with Fitz? She's just been more worried about getting that bond with him back. And here Fitz has said, like, look, I care about you and I still want to be around you, but I can't go back to us being Fitzsimmons. I just can't. I mean, physically, mentally, and emotionally, he's just not ready for that. And that's just another knife for poor Simmons. Which of course does sort of again raise the possibility that she might use some of that alien tech to try and fix Fitz, whether or not he likes it. I mean, granted, that's just me spitballing, but it feels right. It feels like that's an idea that they would go for. I mean, the dramatic possibilities are just too juicy kind of not to think that that wasn't put on the table at some point. Also, it's a little disturbing that, that Bobby is keeping secrets from Coulson. But then again, if she's also out there having more direct interaction with Nick Fury than we'd possibly previously thought, I mean, Nick Fury has to be talking with somebody out there. And somebody had to make arrangements for Bobby to infiltrate Hydra. So if it turns out that was also Nick Fury, So let's see, what else? We get to see the return of Agent 33, and she's still wearing the Melinda May look, despite the messed up face. Apparently it's become fused to her face. If you're familiar with the comics, it's a little bit like the character of Baron Zemo. Instead of human-looking face, he basically got a pink stocking cap literally glued to his face with a super thing called, I think it was actually called Adhesive X. And yeah, he looked about as ridiculous as you would imagine. Although, in all fairness, Baron Zemo is a pretty badass villain despite having a ridiculous pink stocking hat glued to his face. Well, the original did. The second one just had a really messed up face who wore wore a pink mask out of respect for family tradition. Yeah, comics are weird, huh? Let's see. What else? Yeah, let's just kind of talk about 33. Skye had a nice throwdown with her. And I'm sure some people out there are probably upset that it ended up being Hunter who kind of had to save her at the last minute. I don't really think this anyway is meant as a slight towards Skye as a character. It's not like depowering her as a strong female character or, whatever ridiculous complaint people on the internet have dreamed up about that whole situation. Now let's think back several episodes ago. Agent 33 proved that she was pretty much an equal match for both Coulson and May. She gave them both a good run for their money. Skye's been a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent for at most a year and a half or so, and her actually getting physical, combat training, that's still a fairly new thing. She's probably had less than a year of that. Now, granted, she was trained first under Ward, and now it's explicitly stated that May is her supervising officer. So she's been trained by some of the very best people that S.H.I.E.L.D. has. I mean, I think in the first episode they even explicitly stated that after Clint Barton and Natasha Romanoff, one of the most badass person in S.H.I.E.L.D. was basically considered to be Melinda May. So Skye's had awesome training, but again, she doesn't have that wealth of experience that those other agents do. So the fact that she almost wins that fight, that's a testament to Skye as a character. That's not any kind of slight to her. Skye's made enormous progress. I remember, she starts out as just a computer hacker. And in a short amount of time, being able to stand up and take on somebody who gave one of the best agents in S.H.I.E.L.D. a run for their money in a fight, that's enormous. If she had won that fight, I'd actually think that was kind of ridiculous. But here they do it exactly right. Sky's come a long way. Sky is really, really good. She is obviously going to go on to be an absolute legend in S.H.I.E.L.D., but she's not quite there yet. She's still going to need help from agents who are more experienced than she is. So, there's that. We also see that Coulson, it does prove to be right that Reyna would indeed open up to somebody like Sky, given that she sort of sees them as being in a similar situation. It's people who want to know what they will become. We also get Reyna explicitly stating that the blue aliens are the Kree, which were first mentioned in Guardians of the Galaxy and first mentioned on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. We get to see them for the first time in Guardians of the Galaxy, at least as live living beings. So, again, this is all just more evidence on the already humongous pile that this is all about the Inhumans. And I don't really have too much else to say about that. I'm a little curious to the idea of the entrance to the Inhumans temple being in Puerto Rico when traditionally the Inhumans city of Adelon was in the Himalayas. But they might be wanting to kind of shift away from that just because of, well, to put it bluntly, not wanting to do anything that might piss off the extraordinarily lucrative Chinese market. And, Tibet is a somewhat touchy subject for the Chinese, understandably. Well, not understandably. Yeah, it's pretty bullshit stuff over there. But, yeah, the Chinese government does not like anybody poking at Tibet publicly. Let's just leave it at that. Okay, so let's see here. Then again, this could just sort of not actually be the entrance to Adelon, like be sort of maybe an Inhumans outpost or something. Because they're obviously going to save the big stuff for the Inhumans movie, which comes out in 2018. Let me see. Oh yes. Since just jumping back to Sky for a moment, we get to see some really interesting symbolic dream imagery with her, and I like how she sees May and Coulson sort of dressed in very mom and dad sort of clothes. I mean, obviously we've seen that Coulson is kind of a surrogate father figure to her, but the idea of May as the surrogate mom is kind of a new one, and it also, in my mind, is a little bit of drumming the idea of May and Coulson as a couple. I mean, it's really sort of hard not to look at what's been going on there and see that, May is. It's kind of it's obvious to me that I think May is sort of interested in Coulson, and Coulson is a little bit too focused on his work to really see that's where she is right now. Let's see. We also get a little bit of backstory from Reyna. I don't think that, even though she said that she met Sky's dad in Thailand, I don't think that she herself is meant to be Thai. She could have just been somebody who came to Thailand from another part of the world, or she could be, of mixed race and again, she could be just a Thai person of mixed race, and it's just one of those people of mixed race who it's really hard to tell that exactly what they are a combination of. But it certainly will be interesting if Reyna, now that she has her lanyard, were to sort of stick around and sort of serve as kind of a part of the team, albeit reluctantly, no doubt. Again, just an interesting idea. Now, speaking of lanyards, we also get to see more of the Koenigs, and just how many of you guys are there does get lampshaded. Patton Oswalt, of course, always awesome to see him on the show. And then throwing out the joke, oh, there's 13 of us. Again, sort of probably just poking some fun at the very popular fan theory that the Koenigs are in fact life model decoys. I'm kind of have a feeling that that's probably not where they're going with all of this. I mean, if somebody was a life model decoy, one would think that one of them being killed would not react in the same way as a human body. I mean, again, I'm just sort of spitballing here, but I think if they'd had a closer look at, was it Sam Koenig who was the one that was killed, or whatever, that they probably would have noticed. But again, that's just sort of my theory. They did have quite a lot of other things on their plate at the time. And this also leads to a confrontation between Ward and the Canning brothers. And they do make it quite clear, hey, you murdered our brother, and we have not forgotten about that. Speaking of Ward, we also get to see that I was correct, that the media actually did their job for once and said, hey, there is some evidence that there might have been a third person involved in the deaths of Ward's brother and parents. So hopefully that will come up again. Now, I read this interview with Brett Dalton the other day, and they were sort of asking him, kind of what does he think is going on with Ward? And his main thing is that Ward still considers himself to be a hero. He's a guy who acknowledges, yeah, I did some bad stuff, but I myself am not a bad person. And, him dropping off that Hydra agent to Coulson and Bobby, and him genuinely being willing to keep his word about not destroying the bus and all of that, it sort of indicates that Ward is, I think, kind of going in the direction of being a wild card. That he's going to go out there and he's going to either help or end up helping or hindering the agents as fits his own personal agenda. Now, right now, his agenda doesn't really seem to include anything beyond get Skye to like me. But if that were to not pan out in such a way that he just kind of has to say, like, okay, Skye's not going to go for it, what do I do next? Well, that makes Ward a very, very interesting wild card. He really could go anywhere and do just about anything. And I've always found characters who you never know if they're going to help the heroes or stab them in the back to be very, very interesting kind of characters to have around. Just because it creates such wonderful tension. And whenever they do choose to help or hinder, they'll usually kind of give a reason that sheds some light on them as a character. And let me see, anything else? No, nothing particular to say about Whitehall. I mean, Whitehall is evil, blah 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 blah. Likes dissecting people, wants to know what's going on, blah 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 blah. Now, of course, this is all sort of set up for Skye finally getting to meet her dad next episode, and the preview indicates that maybe we will finally find out just what it is they will become. I think we'll probably get answers about what's going on with Raina and Skye, and hopefully some more details as to what happened with Mack. I really do hope they're able to, get Mack back to normal, because one of the really genuine criticisms people did level at this show last year was that it was basically a bunch of white people and an Asian lady, at least until the end of the season when they sort of grabbed Triplet up as a regular. Now that they've got a much better, ethnic mix of characters, I think it would be kind of a real mistake to kill off one of the black dudes, because black guys have a really, really sad track record in sort of science fiction-y sort of stories, and let's call S.H.I.E.L.D. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. what it is. It is basically sort of a superhero agent sci-fi sort of thing. And let me see. Anything else? Nothing comes to mind. Anyway, guys, as I said, really, really good episode. Beautifully shot. Nice character stuff. A lot of really cool things are set up. Next week is the mid-season finale. Then there's going to be a little bit of a break with some reruns, and then we start Agent Carter. Still making up my mind as to whether or not I'm going to be doing review vids for Agent Carter. I guess it's just going to depend on what my schedule is like in January. I got a new job not too long ago, so things are still very up in the air at the moment. So with that said, I'm going to call it here. As always, please comment, rate, and subscribe, and of course you can follow me on Twitter at Who's Your Jedi. Until next time, take care and have a good one.